Welcome ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to take a look at the different elements of Elder Scrolls Online. Now depending on what race, class or playstyle you have, different elements are suited better for you. Why? We will see that in a second. Now I just want to take an overall look at the elements, then talk about each one in specifically, and at the end I'm going to do a short conclusion. Now if we take a look at this picture, you see the red color, that's the fire stuff, so it either deals more damage or knocks enemies back. And the frost stuff immobilizes or snares, and the shock stuff, shock is either longer duration or deals damage to nearby enemies or sets people off balanced. So that's just the general things about those three elements. Now there is also other things that happen. If you look here, where is it? Elemental force increases your chance of afflicting enemies with burning, concussion and chilled. Now what the fuck does that mean? Now it's nowhere explained, okay? So burning, what does burning do? It's flame damage over time. So anytime you do use a skill on an enemy with flame that has the flame element, you get the chance to proc the burning status effect. Now what does concussion do? Concussion is from shock. It applies minor maim, which reduces the enemy's damage done by 15% for 4 seconds. And chilled is from the frost, usually snares the enemies for 40% for 5 seconds. And again, anytime you use a skill, it can pop up. That's the thing. Now when we let's start with the shock stuff. So I'm just gonna show you those two general skills just to make an example. Now you see here, and set the second text, and setting concussed enemies off balance for 4 seconds. So how can you set them off balanced? Concussed means he has a concussion status effect. Once he has that and you deal damage, it sets them off balance. Now why can that, what does off balance do? It kinda makes them dizzy, they're drunk. And in the champion tree, some other passives help out. So you see here, increases your damage against off balanced enemies by 10%. Same with certain passives. Let me try to find. Here. Gives you a 15% damage bonus when attacking stunned, immobilized, disorient or silenced enemies. It's all those kind of things. Disoriented, I think is the same as off balanced. I'm actually not even sure, but there's something. It's just some small passives to consider that have those kind of effects. So when we look at it, Argonian, now it doesn't proc all the time. So now you see minor maim, bam, concussion effect on the enemy. It's only 4 seconds, but I mean it's something. And again, minor maim, it's actually 5 seconds. You see it here, the huge fucking surrender buff tracker. Now of course on console you don't have buff trackers, so you don't know. You see it kind of has the shocking glittering stuff around him, so you know, but in the heat of the combat you're never gonna see that. If you play a sorcerer, which mostly has a lot of shock damage and magic damage, there is also a few passives you could take into consideration. So for example, if you look at energized, shock damage increased by 5%, that's actually quite a lot, so it's cool. And then we have implosion, so whenever you deal shock damage, you have a 6% chance to instantly disintegrate enemies under 15% health. Deals a ton of shock damage, so that's 2 passives you only get when you use a shock stuff. The fire element, flame clench, knocks enemies back as you can see with this skill, and then blockade of fire. Burning enemies take 20% more damage from this ability, and burning is the burning status effect. So if I only do it like this, he doesn't really get more damage. I need to affect him with the burning status effect. Like this now. You see it did for a short period of time when he was burning, it did more damage. and Fury Rage simply always deals 10% more damage. Now to the conclusion and also a few tips, like for example, depending on what race you are, like you see Altmer has increased Flame Frost and Shock damage, which is really helpful. And also another thing, for example, if you are a Nord, like a Nord can't get Chilled status effect, a Dunmer can't get the Burning status effect. So that's kind of those things, at least it was a few patches ago, and it's pretty sure still the same. If you want to make 100% sure, go test it yourself. Now, PvE wise versus PvP, let's start with PvE. So PvE wise, most people use fire simply because it does so much more damage compared to other things. And on top of that, like if you have a Magicka DK in your group that uses Engulfing Flames, which increases all fire damage by another 10%, and it works for the whole group. So it's just easy choice, fire, because it deals so much more damage. Now if you are a sorcerer, they are a little bit the exception, but usually even Sorcs have a fire stuff on the back bar to put Blockade of Fire and the Destro ulti, and on their main bar they usually have a shock stuff. So they still can proc their passives a little bit. That's the thing. Of course, like if you want to do fun builds, even shock or like frost builds, for example, like my Frost Mage build, they're also viable and really good. And there's also a few cool sets like Winterborn set that you could use, which I'm using on my Frost Mage build. Pretty cool. Now, if we take a look at PvP, now there it actually really depends what you want to do. You want to dish out a shit ton of damage, then you probably want fire. But now, if you want to be fucking annoying to your enemies, you probably want to be using either ice or a shock stuff, right? Simply, I think Ice one is the most annoying one because it puts so much snares and root on the enemy, which is insane, especially if you're playing a group and like 1-2 people use this. Combined with sets like Winterborn, it can be a really fucking killer, believe me. It always depends what kind of build you run, so that's just the idea, go try it out. Because stem builds really suffer when somebody's using ice stuff. They get snared, they can be always rooted, and it's really hard to catch up, and they need to use their stamina to either dodge roll out of the root or use a skill. Same thing with lightning, like it does small AoE damage, you can do heavy attacks, enemies can't dodge roll the heavy attacks of shock staves, so that's also pretty cool. Yeah, so that's just the general things, and like I said, remember the status effects, remember those skills, like they have different elements and different effects, so it's pretty cool. Now, as I know, like I don't really know a lot of builds that use those kind of things, but there is some really cool stuff, like my Frost Mage build for PvE, and I will also try to do a PvP build with Frost abilities pretty soon, but I'm still not having all the skills. I hope this was a little bit helpful and gave you a small insight into those elements. If you have any questions or anything to add that you would like me to know, then please let me know in the comment section below. Thank you for watching and have a nice day. I need to go save my Argonian now.